giving power to people to speak even when they do not deserve that power. Pano, what is the pandemic struggle? We think that the pandemic struggle, specifically for this debate, is supposed to look like initiatives to fight what is in the pandemic. A fight in the pandemic, specific things like service provision. We think like specific things like fighting pandemic information and how to keep yourself safe in the pandemic. We think everything to keep us alive in the pandemic is what a pandemic struggle actually looks. Having this in mind, we believe that we have a model to deal with these sorts of people. What's our model with dealing with this sort of banning? We countries and courts are going to have regulations on by social media, going to allow or to enable regulations on social media platforms to enable that there is banning of these specific things. We think that this is something exclusive and very important in this debate. Ban those people that say things that are unqualified, that are exclusive at the end of the day. Panel, what are we going to look at? Panel, we are going to ban, close, eradicate the sites that specifically have this public opinion. We're going to show you why this is important. Panel, we believe that we are also going to ban public platforms that do not entail professionalism at the very center of it all. Panel, having this in mind, in the spirit of this debate, I'm going to bring to you two levels of analysis. Panel, why is public opinion bad and why professionalism is better off upfront? This justifies to us why public opinion should be banned in the first place. Before I start on to this, I'll take a POI from OO.
Here, recognize that in the pandemic struggle, we have got policy implementation in a bid to cap the virus. And we think at the point where we have policy implementation, then we deserve the public opinion and involvement within the democratic structures engage.
Hillary, I would like to stop you there. We think public opinion. I'm going to show you why everything Hillary says wasn't his case in my speech. Pano, we also think that these laws specifically have been ineffective. We think public opinion specifically must be banned, even along with implementation of these specific things. Pano, first level of analysis. Why public opinion is bad? Pano, we think in public opinion, the proper description is public opinion. People say whatever they feel like and whatever they want to do. We think that people on social media and social media platforms, we've all seen this on news. People give their opinions on why the government is specifically corrupt, even when they're not qualified and do not have justifiable evidence to show that the government is corrupt. Pano, they come out and talk about all different sorts of things and shenanigans because they are at will to say it, because they are empowered to say it. We think that therefore the Ugandans or public have misused this opinion to simply come out with conspiracy theories. We have seen people coming out and calling specific people gay, specific people, embezzling funds that they actually do not have proof. We think that the attachment to this whereby proof is not provided with this specific sort of information is very much problematic. What does this do? This shows you that this information that is not backed up by evidence, by not clear justification, circulates in society. We think that therefore, because it circulates in society, it causes lots of mislead. We have seen people like Donald Trump that bring opinions on social media just because they feel they have right of public speech or opinion to express their opinion and mislead so many people, leading a lot of chaos, leading a lot of misunderstandings of the government, people needing to untrust the government or to make cause of mistrust in the government, which leads to a lot of problems. We think that leads to a lot of chaos, riots, and people starting to think that they have the right to actually go against directives because they have lost trust in the government and think that the government has failed them. We think that this is very, very much problematic on the side of team proposition. Side proposition, I'll decide to support our case there too. Before I move on, I'm going to engage CEO, please.
Okay, say you say that you're going to be banning the sites where there's public opinion. Do you not think this will be infringement of the rights that people have to express how they feel?
You should understand that under any constitution, people have a right to public opinion, yes. But the point where this public opinion infringes, causes chaos, misleads people to do things that they do not even understand. I already gave you in my analysis specifically why how these people give specific information that is misleading without proof, without justification, without evidence. This misleads people to do the wrong things. We think that therefore when you influence people negatively and mislead them, then the burden of clearing this air of this wrong information finally comes in. We think that at this level, we think that therefore professionalism is that very much in we think that these people are not being professional. We think that they lack the information, they lack the analytical skills, they lack the specific tools that they need to deliver qualitative and quantitative information to specific or to the public. We think that therefore, in my protected time, Paul, we think that therefore, on that sort of a front, we decide or we deserve to restrict these people because they do not have the tools that are needed to provide the proper, reliable information. We think that information is good and expression is good, but the fact that you are expressing yourself doesn't justify that you should give unreliable and unsanctioned and we think unfair information that is going to be not actually backed up by any evidence that is backed up. We think that only professionalisms have specifically are those people that are specifically those people that actually have that sort of like sort of tools to deliver that sort of information that is satisfiable. We think that everything that public opinion wants to put across can be put across by professional people. We think that people, because opinion people say it in very much violent way, unfiltered language, shocking language and charisma to get them free airtime and to get more followers on TikTok, to get more followers on Facebook. We think on that point they will do anything that it takes to mislead the public, to mislead the information. Conclusively, as PM, I've given you analysis on why public opinion is very much problematic. We shall engage on all steps their best scenario. My DPM speech, I'm going to talk about why professionalism is very much important. Never been more proud to be PM and winning this debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, PM, for that speech. I see Splendor is here. Probably you guys will have like a chit chat via WhatsApp. And if you can confirm that you'll be like the DPM and you're not ironing, you can let me know in my WhatsApp DM. In the meantime, let's have now the LO here.
I'm not sure if I'm the LO. Hillary, are you LO or I do LO? Okay, jokes aside. Okay, hello, my name is Paul Oyala. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes, please, you're audible.
Let me try reconnecting. I think I might.
Or if you're still there, you don't need to reconnect. We were hearing you. I don't know. Oyala, you can unmute and continue.
Okay, sorry about that. I hope this is stable. Am I audible? Oh.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. I hope I'm really audible because when you speak,
you are very audible.
So in case anyone has a POI, please type it in the text area. I love checking POIs from closing government, just so I know what you're bringing. And I also take from ping pong, specifically because Henry has utilized it 7 minutes. So I hope that helps everyone. So I'll be starting shortly. Let me just see which song. Okay, so starting in Firstly, I'm muted. No. So starting in 3, 2, 1. Pano, this debate is about banning and whether banning literally has impacts. But the second thing, it's about public opinion, specifically in the pandemic struggle. So we think that just defining public opinion is not enough because we need to actually understand what entails public opinion, but also what entails a pandemic struggle. Opening government literally does not give you any of this, but also the substantive they give is all premised on literally that individuals have no evidence. So I'm going to literally show you that actually public opinion individuals who literally provide for it have evidence, but also they are premised on professionalism, which is the primary foundation of OGK. So I think that will put them out. Then I'll deal with the context that CG is supposed to run in this debate. So 4 key things to first note. First, what's public opinion? Because you literally just get you get a brief understanding from OG. We think that public opinion is a collective thing generally, but 3 key things to note on this. The first thing is that it is premised on facts. That's to say, it is premised on individuals who literally provide for it, like the auditors, people like doctors, people like scientists, people like accountants, that provide for that public opinion to actually get exposed to the outside world for all individuals to understand. But the second thing is that it has a huge coverage. That's why you see that it is defined as a public opinion. Why? Because it has the capacity to collectively make individuals have one specific understanding, which is a unifying understanding. But the third thing is that it is provided by media outlets, that's to say in terms of like traditional media or mainstream media, but also through articles. At the point where literally that literally exists, then we think that OG is actually out of this debate in terms of context. But the second thing, what do we think entails a pandemic struggle? Because realize OG just says that it's a time of a health crisis. But we think it literally entails 4 key things. The first thing is that it's largely unstable. That's to say, a largely unstable state, but also the pandemic itself is largely unstable. That's why you see that there is reoccurrence of waves, even during the Spanish flu, or during the pandemic of the coronavirus. But the second thing to understand is that there is gross death of individuals. That's to say, most of the individuals in the state are literally losing life, and that means they need some form of redress. But the third thing is that there is a collapsing health sector, and that health sector literally needs some form of redress, and we think that our public opinion actually provides for that. But the fourth and final thing is that there is insufficiency of drugs, or the drug that literally provides for individuals betterment in terms of that specific pandemic that's existing. The third thing is to address is on why we literally ban, because we think OG does not give you like why they literally ban. 3 key things. The first thing, we ban something when it literally harms others. So I'm going to show you that public opinion doesn't. But the second thing, we ban something if it is unsustainable and unprogressive to individuals. The third thing is that we ban something when it deters the economy overall. That's to say, in terms of compromising specific economic sectors that literally benefit from any other avenue that specific initiative that we are banning compromises. But the fourth and final thing to say is on what's the process of banning. We think that firstly, it's non-instantaneous. That's to say, it does not provide immediate results. That's to say, it takes some time to actually initiate the entirety of banning. Why? Because of the process by which you're banning something, that it is covering the entire spectrum, and that means that you need to actually be patient with it. But the second thing is that it requires sabotage in terms of like trade-off of specific things, and I'll show you that. But the third thing is that it is largely beneficial to government, and it is in no way beneficial to individuals. And we think that at the point where literally banning literally has all that, then there's a problem. I'll take you OG, ping pong specifically, if any. Okay, Henry.
Okay,
Sorry.
so Norbert speaks on Frontline and gives his opinion about something called COVID-19. Then the people who actually give reactions and comments and opinions on social media. Who is the public and who is not the public?
Public opinion is informed by a profession. At the point where someone at the front line gives that information, it means that that person is the premise of anything that is commented on. That means they are getting their information from that specific person who is the professional. So there is necessity for Henry to understand that. So why then do we actually on our side advocate for not banning public opinion? 4 key things to say. Firstly, is in the nature of public opinion. We say that firstly, public opinion, the mere fact that it is premised on factual thing, means that it is premised on evidence and research. That means at the point where literally individuals research on something and literally provide it to individuals outside, we think that means that you're providing a truistic event for individuals to relate with. But the second thing we say is that people have a choice whether to believe in that specific public opinion or not to believe in that specific public opinion. Because we think that putting out something to public in terms of like mainstream media does not exactly mean that you actually need to believe it, but it rather means that you can consider having it in your life. So the point where people then decide to actually believe in it and it becomes a public opinion, then we think that it is justified. And the importance of this specific argument is that it is not premised on any form of falsifications of events. That's to say, fundamentally individuals need that specific information, but also we preserve their kind of choice that they literally desire. But the second thing we say is on the urgency of the situation, because realize we say that a pandemic struggle usually is premised on governments existing, covering up their tracks. At the point where governments are covering up their tracks, then it means there is necessity for transparency. We think that on our side, when you literally do not ban public opinion, then it means that firstly you provide for transparency to exist. Why? Because all sectors can literally be transparent in terms of an individual who is an expert providing the entire information. But secondly, is that it ensures the use of similar precautions that have been used elsewhere and have worked. I'll take CG right now. CG, hurry.
Okay, so do you believe that rights and choices can actually be curtailed for an emergency in terms of crisis like we're talking about?
Okay. So, Pano, the only time rights and choices are curtailed is when it harms a specific person directly. We think that public opinion at the point where literally people can literally decide to buy into it or not to buy into it does not mean that you're compromising others. So we think that it is understandable for us to actually provide on our side. So the third thing to say is on that you legitimize the entire government to actually lose buying. Why? Because you realize that banning illegalizes the information that people literally benefit from that kind of public opinion. The impact that you get from this is that firstly, when government loses that buy-in, they literally will be vetted out in terms of the democratic processes. But the second thing is that the entirety of banning is counterintuitive. So what are the impacts that you get from our side? Three key things. The first thing is that we observe the free will of individuals in terms of them deciding what they want. But the second thing is that there is existence of transparency. But the third thing is that it has minimal prerequisites in terms of like adoption of solutions to the pandemic struggle. And the fourth thing is that we still think under our side, there is still an alternative of the criminal justice system to actually put our people that are not transparent. Let's say that we take government at their best. Let's say we ban. Why do we still win? 5 things. First is that their side is dictatorial. But the second thing is that it is premised on censorship that literally led to the Arab uprising. The third thing is that the alternative forms of information are unreliable since it's controlled by the government. The fourth thing is that you legitimize government fund deviation. And the fifth and final thing is that you compromise capitalism and its benefits. We are proud to win from all.
Right. Thank you so much, dear O. Just give me a second. I mean, LO. Just give me a second. Okay. So I'm just going to request Cool to just let me do the timing because I think the bot got confused and did not end my timing. So let me just do that. You can always see the text space and you see that I'm doing it. So I don't think we need to No. I'm just clarifying on something. So let's have DPM. I understand Splendor is going to be DPM.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. So panel, like in today's debate, like the side that should effectively win today's debate is the side that proves 2 things. One, how their own side in and of itself is justified on the level of principle. But 2, on the level of impact and utility, how their word minimizes debts to the to the best possible minimum. What we simply got from side Ugo, in particular leader of opposition, was when he came up and started giving you arguments of what a pandemic looked like. So he gave you things like, see, within these particular places, economy is unstable, you have gross debt of individuals, collapsing health sectors, and the likes of them. But he failed to effectively tell us or effectively show us how we best curtail all of these particular instances in our world. The levels of extension you get to Henry's marvelous speech in and of itself is something that in and of itself wins us like today's debate. So on the first level of principle justification, like Henry has already given you like about 2 levels already. I give you another level, and it's just simple, and that's on the level of the social contract theory. So the social contract theory is simply a theory that generally states that government in and of itself is justified or is generally allowed to generally take away certain rights from certain like from individuals at a point when they think that those particular rights in and of itself affect the well-being of the entire state. We in particular think that this is exactly what we have like within the purview of today's debate. So what it looks like is that public opinion, mind you, like forget the lies that LO tells you. Public opinion does not mean you have to go and do research. It does not mean you have to go and do any level of like auditing, or any doctor has to go and do any level of stuff for you. What like it like simply like entails when you talk of public opinion is that anybody literally could just come online and type something. The problem with this particular action is that see, in and of itself, when particularly when we're in a pandemic struggle, what it looks like is that at every point in time where you have a pandemic, such that if you have someone come up and say, oh, to cure COVID, or you don't necessarily need to salt water. At every point in time where all of these is able to assess it, something that this guy in and of itself something that LO in and of itself consists to, when he tells you that see, a huge amount of people can access this particular level of information. So what it looks like is that at every point in time where you have wrong information, a huge amount of people is affected negatively. It goes as far as increasing the amount of COVID cases we have because people then begin to believe conspiracy theories and not generally begin to subscribe to all of these particular levels of COVID laws. It goes as far as people even dying from trying things that they should not have even tried in the first instance. To the extent where this particular action in and of itself leads directly to the death or to the detriment of a huge amount of people on the levels of the social contract theory, we become very, very much justified to say, we effectively ban this particular action. But on the second level of what world we best get levels of utility from us, we think we get the best of utility in a world where we ban this particular thing. How so? We think that the alternative, and that is the counterfactual that Henry effectively gives in our world. It's a world where we just allow professionals to be the only one to be able to give this information out via verified bodies. So what it looks like is that during things like pandemic struggles, we only have maybe professionals under bodies like WHO and the likes giving us all of these with the backing of the government, giving us all of these levels of information within this particular period. We think this particular level of augmentation is something that is particularly key. How so? Because it means that at every point in time, we are then 100% sure that we get verified or that we basically get verified levels of information as opposed to their own word. Meaning that every form of information that we get in and of itself is not one that is verified, but less harmful. But even in a world where it's harmful or where that information then comes up to be harmful, we think it's only in a world that where maybe someone we have a legit information that comes outside and in and of itself it does not it later turns out to be harmful. We can generally hold people these particular bodies or governments culpable, as opposed to a world where we just have public opinion. It is just the public all of these false information in and of themselves are things that can be regulated, meaning that things that could be removed. But we say the reason why we go for a total ban and not for regulation is because we are talking about people's lives here. And every point in time where you put regulations, you generally leave different levels of loopholes for people to generally be able to exploit. And that's how comes we go for a total ban. Why? Because the risk factor, the opportunity cost in this particular instance are people's lives. And mind you, we are not banning it forever. We are just banning it during this pandemic struggle till we are done with the fight for this particular pandemic struggle. So as I said, a big case that could come from them is RC. If this particular guy is posted in social media, it is deleted. The problem is before it is deleted, people has already gotten access to it and the damage has already been done. Hence, necessarily a need for us to ban it in and of itself in the first place to be able to protect the lives of our citizens. So what then now becomes the impact of these levels of banning that we effectively get, particularly when after we ban, we then just provide our alternative. The impact of this is that it now counteracts all of the many problems that exist within the level of like the pandemic struggle. So problems such as the economy being unstable, problems such as gross death of individuals, collapsing health sectors, and things like that are things that you generally limit to a great level. How so? Because when people generally receive just verified information, what then looks like is that, okay, I'll take a quick report.
Okay.
Shoot.
Your whole post is premised on the bad side of banning. Don't you think that people are rushing? But secondly, it's just difficult for governments to ban something that makes it unpopular and hated out.
Please sit down. Like, as it's simple. At every point in time where we weigh right to life and right to choice, right to life weighs more than right to choice at every point in time. Government has, government has a responsibility, their primary responsibility, to protect the lives of their citizens, and that's how comes OO's line of people have a choice to generally whether they want to believe it or not. We think government already has a direct direct responsibility to protect those people, even if they are ignorant or even if they would later want to choose to believe it. So there's no way government's primary role in and of itself is to protect lives of citizens. Government is justified to say we ban it to protect these guys. Particularly since I've already pointed out to you have right to life in and of itself weighs more than right to choice. But onto my last level of impact analysis. So a world where we generally ban this thing and just increase professional information via government verified bodies. What we generally have is more people abiding by COVID protocols or pandemic protocols, and more people generally getting just the right information. The impact of this particular argument means we have less amount of people falling prey to conspiracy theories, less amount of people generally falling prey to all of these levels of conspiracy theories and lies of them, meaning less amount of people falling sick, less amount of people becoming sick. And at long run of this, where we have less amount of people becoming sick, what you then get is an increased rate at which we now beat the pandemic, as opposed to a world where we have public opinion just being out there, and you have an increased amount of conspiracy theories and an increased amount of people going to hospitals and on two things. What side is principally justified? The side that supports right to life, which actually weighs more than right to choice, and secondly, the side that generally gives you the level of positive impact, never more proud to win. Yeah.
Start with me before you good and all right. I'll be starting in 4, 3, 2, 1. Chair, one thing we ought to recognize is that OG fails to show why this thing is exclusive to when we have public opinion, but also the fact that they fail to contextualize what public opinion looks like and the kind of impact that we get, but also questioning the legitimacy of this kind of ban by which they fail to understand and prove why this suits the metric that we provide from our leader of opposition. But two, in terms of not catering for the different stakeholders whom we cater both on our side, one, it means that we are able to save life, but while upholding the mandate that we have in terms of us allowing for inclusion of people and participation in the country's affairs in whatever the case, and we still think we still win on the side. Never been prouder to oppose. Let us try to engage what the opening government brings to this debate. Basically, their case can be summarized in two key points. One is that why they think professionalism is something that they value, but they still not show us why this is something that's exclusive when we ban public opinion. We'll be showing why professionalism can still be achieved on our side when we have public opinion. But two, what they argue for is the impact of public opinion in terms of maybe sending out wrong information and stuff. But the problem is that they fail to show us why this is something that will be existent because of the nature of public opinion which we characterize to you. So what basically do you get from us? We tell you that, look here, public opinion has got to do with collective effort, but also it means a huge coverage. It also means like the media, like the mainstream media actually like sending out information and so on and so on and so on and so on. It means like articles. It means like inviting people to social media platforms, or maybe inviting people to televisions, and they're able to voice out this. What does this essentially mean? It means that if you're able to use like the mainstream media, so the television and something like that, it means that this kind of media, one, is supposed to act impartial, but two, is supposed to be independent, but three, is supposed to achieve its fundamental objective. So this means that extremes that will be existent in terms of falsification of information is something that will not be existent, because they've got regulations by which they work from. But even if at the best case scenario that we think this kind of information has been dispatched to the people, we think that the counterfactor that exists in terms of the criminal justice system is ready to deal with the kind of extremes, and we think we still win on that while preserving the exclusive benefits that we get basically in terms of the public opinion. We give you a metric and we tell you, look here, we ban things, one, if we have more harms actually arising out of this particular action, but two, if we think like realization of fundamental human rights is something that actually being curtailed, but three, we think if the counterfactor is better, but four, we think if the progression of different stakeholders is not being catered for, then we have all reasons to ban, by which the entire government has already failed to prove why exactly the public opinion meets this kind of metric in this particular situation. But let's try to engage you and show you the partial extension that you get from our side. The extension that you get from our side is, one, on the nature of what the pandemic struggle looks like. We think the pandemic struggle has to do with matters dispatching of information to people about how to be able to deal with the pandemic struggle. But also we think in terms of the pandemic struggle, government has the mandate to be able to enact policies such as the lockdown, policies such as this and that, and so many policies that arise out of the pandemic struggle. So we think of a point where we have policies actually arising out of the pandemic struggle. This means that there should be room for involvement of both parties on how these policies look like, and in terms of how these policies will work like. So what does this obviously mean? It means like when government enacts a policy, maybe like when government enacts a policy like lockdown, therefore there should be room for engagement, for public opinion, for people to state out how the lockdown literally affects them, and how government can have room for it to be able to adjust in terms of the lockdown, how to cater for both for both parties. So we think at one point where we still have the pandemic struggle and march on, then we still think structures such as democratic structures which are still existing, but also allowing for room for participation of these different citizens, something that we still value at the end of the day. Why is this true? We think this is true because, one, it allows for checks and balances to the government in terms of them having this kind of social change which we think may be existing. Because, one, we think when people participate, one, it gives them the fulfillment that their opinions can basically be had by government, and we think it's something that the citizens will value. But two, we think when we have the checks and balances of the government and allow them for them to have this to have this kind of responsiveness in terms of what we advocate for as the people, then this means that we're actually providing for the agency in terms of us improving the health care system, in terms of us allowing things like providing for strategies and structures which allow for us to be able to thrive out of this pandemic struggle. And we think that at this point they will not have a reason to ban. Therefore, we acknowledge the role of the democratic structures and participation of citizens, which provides satisfaction to both the government in terms of its efficiency, which comes out, but also two, it also means that people can be satisfied because the opinions can be heard and their needs are catered for. So this obviously means that in terms of the stakeholders analysis, we still win on this, but also we provide for progression, which is going to be existing. But also, this means that even if this opinion has been sent out and been falsified, it still means that people have got the right and people are rational. This means they will consider anything depending on how logical it is explained. So at one point, we know this is not automatic that somebody will have to believe this information, but it all entirely depends on how it has been treated, and we still have for structures that deal with the extremes that are existing. I'll take a POI from CG. Please shoot.
Okay. So the entirety of your argument is necessarily on allowing people to express their opinion in terms of these things, right? But then you need to understand that the containment of this right itself is a means of government providing better solutions to the people's struggle. Engage that within the context of your case.
Look here, when you ban this kind of narrative, it means there is no room for the public to be able to exercise or maybe try to voice out their grievances. The problem with this is that when government enacts policies, I will not have the kind of public feedback or public opinion, then we think these policies cannot be 100% perfect. And this means that we allow, we limit that kind of feedback, which is important for us to have that governments which is important to guide government's actions, but also it is important for us to influence that kind of public policy, but also it is important for us to have a means of checks and ban access to our legislators. So that would be a dictatorial world where you ban public opinion and still enact policies. We show that policy is something that's synonymous with the kind of pandemic struggle because of things like lockdown and all these which are basically put in place to curtail this kind of spread of this particular action. So why we think that is very, very important. But also in terms of the legitimacy of this, we think something we can prove because one, it builds on the kind of relationship which is existing between the citizens as well as the government. We think it's something that we value in terms of progression of society, but also still allowing for efficiency the situation because when this is the case, we think government here on the lockdown is too pressing for us, and we think we make opinion. So the point where you really ban this and becomes very detrimental to everyone of us, and we think we not value this in the long run. But also we think the kind of change that comes with this, but also in terms of upholding our social contract theory, which we still achieve, having engagement of both parties in terms of the policies that we get, but also on the existence of the intrinsic nature of public opinion, because we have structures that can limit this in terms of what the media is supposed to act to, but also the counterfactor that we provide in case there are extremes of falsified information, and how we can correct this in terms of the criminal justice system that allows this and is able to indoctrinate a particular kind of narrative among the people on why like detailed and accurate information is involved. But there is people that may come on television and something public opinion, they're still professional, and that's why they're invited. Otherwise, we not just invite a common man, we can invite somebody from the public, but who is a doctor, who is a profession, and we still think this is something that's very valuable. But even with you, but also we still think that people are assured this is something that we cannot still question in this debate. But with that, we still think, yeah, we win on those key particular clashes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DLO. We've now come to the close of the opening half. We now cross over to hear from the MG.
Okay, guys. My name is Dominic Stanley Marcus. I want to believe I'm audible for everyone.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Just in case I sort of break in between, just let me know so I can fix this. Okay, so just before I start my speech, I would love to dedicate this speech. It's going to be my final, this is my first final as a speaker. All my life I've been adjudicating. Yeah. So I'm dedicating this to my late mom because tomorrow will make it definitely a year she passed. And I'm also dedicating this to Ayan. You're the best so far. And for point of clarity, I'll be taking POIs from CO as well as to engage OO in the context of our debate. All right. In 2, 3, 1. What you need to first of all understand within the whole concepts that we had from the opening debate is all about the professionalism of information and also the irrational means of disseminating this information that were not necessarily proved to the public and how this necessarily harms the people and also harms the government. So that's like essentially what we had from the entire opening debate. But we think that this debate is going to be limited if CG or CO should also run that sort of argument. But what we necessarily are going to be picking out from the opening debate is the matter of feedback mechanism, which OO necessarily introduced through their DLO of the people creating a sort of feedback response expression of public opinion towards government policy itself. We think that's like a very strong case within this debate, and that's what CG is going to be entirely engaging. First, the context of what public opinion essentially is all about, right? First, we concede to OO when OO tells us about the utility of public opinion. But then beyond what OO necessarily tells us, right, we think public opinion serves as a checkmate mechanism for the people to, one, scrutinize the government, and two, express their own inclusive democratic participation within a democratic structure, and then three, also assess the accountability measure of government towards the social contract theory fulfillment itself. We think these two premises means that, one, effectiveness of government policy, and then also two, accountability is something that we also need to seriously concentrate in this debate. But why do we think that the essentiality of this banning itself is justified? On two different levels of argument. One, on principle argument of how government necessarily have the right to clamp down on all manner of fundamental human rights just for them to necessarily provide better solution in terms of national crisis. We think in a world where OO necessarily consists to lockdown measures, right, which means it comes with things like restriction of mobility. We think that word also is a word that gives grants to the government to necessarily clamp down on public opinion as a measure of also curtailing the issues of the COVID-19, which they necessarily are crying for in their own word. Why? We think first that public opinion takes a form of people necessarily bringing up all manner of irrational decisions or ideas which they necessarily have because of their failure of like having credibility measures in the government, and also because people necessarily count this about as a tool of criticizing a government which they necessarily perceive to be of enmity based on their own political lining. What it means is that one, it harms this particular group of people, and also two, it even harms other persons who did not even want to buy the ideas of partisan politics itself. So we think that it is even better in a world where the government necessarily block this blockage in itself in order to sterilize the system. But then secondly, right, we also think in a world where you allow for all manner of multiplicity of ideas, mostly in terms of whether it is professional or not professional in terms of COVID-19 itself, what you do is that you create a mechanism of frustrating the government's efforts in solving the issues. What you must first of all understand is that national crisis calls for ultimate and unlimited civil obedience and civil compliance. In a world whereby you create a leeway for civil disobedience in terms of expression of public ideas that may not necessarily all go away within the framework of government solvency to that problem, it means you even cripple the incentive for people having faith within the government's effort in solving that problem itself. And that is what OO necessarily did not even care for in their own word. But then secondly, right, we also think that you also reduces the chances of yourself assessing the effectiveness of government policy in that instances itself. Notice we consider our own fact that yes, that public opinion serves as a measure of government necessarily checking all these things, whether it is right or wrong, right? But we think in a world where you have stringent actions and all manner of opinions flying here and there, you necessarily need to clamp that down in order for you to have a total sense of direction. So why do we think it's even better for the people? On a matter of accountability, we think that this ban at the end of the whole struggle will now give the people that free access of rating the government activities and also having a full right of like criticizing them, because we think that criticism would be better on that ground, because now you have been able to, after you have like necessarily been silent, you have not been able to assess the whole system and then check whether it necessarily works or not. But then secondly, we also think it also even puts the government in a culpability measure of either running up for its responsibility in terms of how it necessarily does its own activities when it does not necessarily give room for the engagement of people, and also how it necessarily tests its own strength measure. Yes, shoot, quick. Shoot.
Okay. So your entire
yeah.
case is basically that government plays better. What's the incentive for government to provide people with a platform to express themselves? Because
Beautiful.
public opinion provides that platform. Engage.
Okay, beautiful. I've already shown you how that platform itself can necessarily be utilized by persons who do not share the political lining of government itself. But you think what you need to necessarily understand is that this feedback measure you are calling for in your own word already exists. How? Within the democratic structure. We think in an instance where people have already elected representatives into the cabinet to make informed decisions for them, it is a word where they have necessarily ceded their rights to their own representative within the government structure. So when they are talking about government here, we are not talking about the government in a government exclusive of the people, but then we are talking about a government inclusive of the people through their own representatives in the government cabinet, because the faith they necessarily give to these guys is for them to legislate for them based on their own needs in an office. So it's much more like a proxy to power from the people through their own representation, and we think that is necessarily justified in our own debate, right? So panel, why do we think that this necessarily is even justified? We think first of all that it clamps down on the influence of public figures who try to hijack public rumors for their own benefits gain. You must understand the rational traction that public opinion necessarily use Ghana in terms of public figure flying all manner of fake news up and about, because these guys have the social tractions of people following them, right? So in a world where you do not have this checkmate, it means you allow the polarization and the proliferation of all manner of public figure to spring up and then doing all manner of things within the public sectors in terms of opinion, which can necessarily frustrate the government policy itself. But we think things that secondly that it also provides the ability for people to now better hold the government accountable. Like I've already told you that before, that criticism is not effective in a times where you have not allowed where you have not allowed the total outcome to be visible to all. So in a world where the total outcome is not visible, it is not better for the people to now interrogate and criticize and then hold the government accountable. That is even why we are even necessarily banning within just this short period of time. It's not like we are necessarily banning forever, right? So on the principle justification, we also think that necessarily is good. To rebut OO's case, we don't think that public opinion necessarily come out from the both professional platform, like these guys have said. That's like a lie. They are trying to make this debate to be sweet for them, but we think that's a lie. But even if it does, right, we think that the public traction that this could necessarily have in terms of using it as a political measure or frustrating the government policy is something that justifies the ban of itself, and then leaving the people at the leeway of necessarily making their own assessment after the entirety of the whole after making their own assessment after the entirety of the whole COVID struggle itself. Because what makes struggle is because there is a need for all inclusive actions and compliance toward the government's effort in solving the national crisis. We have never been too proud to win from CG. Yeah.
Thank you so much, MG. We shall now cross over and hear from this MO.
Oh, am I
I don't
audible?
think we can.
Right. Miriam Besamari, and I'm sorry, actually, I didn't get all your speeches because of my network, but I promise to engage the government at its best.
Sorry about
I'm
that.
going to begin. And PO, if you have a point of information, you're going to unmute and you ask me, lest I won't see in the text space. I'm going to begin. Resolved, this House would ban public opinion in a pandemic struggle. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this case, government says that they should think and do on behalf of the citizens. They should actually think and come to a conclusion on behalf of the citizens. They also say they should interfere with the citizens' freedom of speech, believing that they have all ideas that actually the citizens would appreciate, believing that they are the people who are supposed to do and think on behalf of the citizens right here. So it is in a situation where we actually need many ideas. It is in a situation where we need all the people to intervene because it is a pandemic and hence a crisis.
to actually handle the people and do its work, but then that war you then at the end of the day you hold it accountable. That is when you actually you're going to come with evidence and be like, oh, we told you to do expected you to do this when we put you into power, but you didn't do anything. You get? So at the end of the day, that's when you are holding it accountable, and it will actually realize that it didn't do this and this. But the point in time where you do not allow even do anything, but then start bringing out public opinions, that is when you are even checking out or checking in exactly what they haven't done, panel. So notice how this is problematic. Notice that it is very problematic in a way that these people aren't going to no, we are going supposed to do this, or we had laid a plan layout that we are going to do this, but people haven't. That plan layout is. So what that means is that they aren't going to do that, and they are going to consider maybe what you are saying without even budgeting for it, because they do not have that policy in themselves. But in a world where they sit and say that we have this policy and we are going to do this policy, and this policy will make us have this impact analysis panel, we are going to have this impact after doing this policy. This is when they actually going to we are going to control the impact of the struggle. But in a world where they base on your opinions only, is that world where they are not going to even control the impact of the struggle. Another situation, another point OO comes with is one that is. Pardon, am I still audible? Hopefully, I'm still audible. Another thing OO comes with is one that yes, is one that but before that, we have shown the nature of public opinion itself does not actually based on facts, right? So another thing they come and based on is that they will actually get they will do what? They will get the government will consider their opinions or their rights. But we tell you, at that point in time where you feel that the government should only consider your rights, but without considering how it will actually help you, is that world where maybe you are going to frustrate the government. And at that point in time where you frustrate the government using your political view or political case view, whereby you in that you did not support the government maybe when it was coming into power, because understand that most people who did not support the government will not actually support any good the government is doing. So what that means is that they will actually always consider everything okay, even if it is at a lower level, they will consider bad. So at that point in time where they consider the bad only, this is why you are actually going to make people lose trust in the government. At that point in time where people lose trust in the government, this means that there won't be national unity or cooperation panel. At that point where you are going to put it in the text space, and I'll only take closing opposition. Thank you very much. So at that point in time where people are not national, like they are not united in a world or in a country, so that means the government will be itself and the people will be themselves, right? So at that point in time, that means that people will not create any excuse, like will not ask the government to do anything, because at the end of the actually divided and the government is divided, there is no national unity. But in a world where we say, oh, allow the government to do certain things, and when it fails you criticize it and make it accountable, and understand that they did do this, that's when we shall create transparency, right? So at that point in time where we create transparency and national unity, this is where we shall see ourselves actually coming out of the pandemic, like actually coming out of the pandemic and the pandemic struggle itself, panel. So notice our extension. Notice how our extension looks like. Our extension looks like this. We come and tell you that yeah, we concede to the fact that some values may be, or public opinion is better, and we are not saying that we are not we actually not fighting public opinion, and we know that people haven't said, like we know that public opinions may be lead to checking of government policies, but at the point in time where public opinions maybe are more of negativity than positivity, at that point in time where the government realizes from various political parties, that is when it will actually frustrate the government. So we believe that humans are not ultimate. That means that they can be curtailed for society benefits, right? So at that point in time where the government actually curtails humans' opinions for the society benefit, we believe that the House should ban public opinion, because banning public opinion, panel, notice that banning public opinion or controlling public opinion, it can bring, like it will not bring any harm for the government, but it will make the government to struggle for itself or control certain.
your time.
Thank you. Yes, please. So let me conclude in 1 second. So our extension looked like this. We showed you how the structure of the government, how the government can actually be held accountable in a world where people allow them to do certain things. But we also showed impact analysis. If at all they do actually bring out all their public opinions, that is where a world where there will be national, like people aren't going to be united. At that point in time where people in the government or government and the parent united, that is when we are not going to see progressibility of the government itself. Pano, also proud to be team closing government.
Thank you so much, the government whip. We shall now cross over to the opposition whip to close the debate.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So for those who have got POIs, I'll be taking them in the text space, and then yeah. So I'll be starting in 3. Sorry. Just a moment. Okay. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. This house would ban public opinion in a pandemic struggle. Now, panel, for us to come to a consensus as to which side of the house deserves to win this debate, we have to look at it on the metrics of which side has brought more content to the debate. So we deserve to win this debate because today we have brought forth our metrics based on the social, the political, and the economic aspect as to why we should not ban public opinion in a pandemic struggle. Now, we deserve to rank above all other sides because we are a panel, we are a side which has brought to you the 3 metrics as to which it's the aspect of public opinion, and who will dwell on that in our speech. Now, first of all, rebuttals. The Prime Minister came to the podium and said that we're going to ban sides that have public opinion. But panel, we are saying that African countries bestow diplomacy, they bestow democracy. So why are we going to ban these sides that bring forth public opinion? You don't necessarily have to be in the government for you to bring something which is constructive to help the nation, right? We tell you that, for example, right now, the government on itself cannot work on its own to bring forth, resolutions to help us as to, move forward in this pandemic, right? Well, the government said which is bring us back to the Mussolini era, back to the fascism era, where people were not allowed to express their views, right? But we are saying that the governments, if they care for their people, they should be there to help people to express democracy, to express diplomacy at its best. Now, the government side also came to the podium and said that public opinion is bad. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you an example of the political side where a journalist here in Zimbabwe, he helped to expose the corrupt officials here in the state. And what happened when those corrupt officials were exposed? They were removed from their post, which is the Minister of Finance. So what are we saying? We're saying that the public opinion is actually important because it will help, political progression within our state. Embezzlement of funds was at its peak, but because of this